Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the mornings. Now, here's David Waldman.
Oh, hey. Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? And good morning, Greg. How you doing? He's already here. We can skip the fanfare. We've got a new one. And that was it. So good morning. It is Monday morning. The chaos is over, everybody. Return to normalcy. Well, return to the normal news cycle anyway. And Donald Trump, I guess, returning to Washington, D.C. to create the chaos there. Flew around everywhere all weekend. We got used to the idea of getting the Nostradamus nose picker guy possibly becoming Department of Homeland Security chief in the middle of a war. Nothing could be wrong with that. Great time for a transition. And, of course, Republicans basically trying to find their feet during this whole thing. I guess perturbed and without a precedent for America not being ready to cheer for a giant war being fought on video screens. It has always worked for them, and it doesn't seem to be working quite the same way this time. And if the photos being circulated on social media are to be believed, and they're really never to be believed, but whatever, it might be nice for this one to be believed. And even if it's BS, quite honestly, it's good stuff, and I hope it circulates a lot. I saw, Tennessee Holler circulating a picture over the weekend purporting to be from a sign on the campus of one of the Tennessee universities. I don't know whether it was the University of Tennessee or some other such university there, but where the college Republicans were circulating this thing, and I guess they had put out a whiteboard. And, the allegation here is, I guess at Tennessee, so probably University of, put out a whiteboard, is war with Iran America first? Like, does it measure up under America first criteria for, presumably MAGA types? It was allegedly put together by the college Republicans at Tennessee, and this photo is credited to them too, and people, I guess, I don't know whether they answered or they put their own tick marks in there, but there were very many more no's than yeses, which was very interesting. And along with the message, the youth is overwhelmingly against war with Iran. The boomers are seething over this, it says, although I'm not certain that all boomers would have been seething over this. In fact, we know of at least one who would not be. And it's not Reagan's America anymore. Unk time to pack it up. They didn't punctuate. Unk likes punctuation, so he can read this at least close to correctly. But at least I know about unks. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting. But, man, between that and the Republican PR apparatus tried to spend the weekend looking for ways to, look, if this war is going to be unpopular, we're going to have to make it about Democrats. And I guess their best shot at it was Homeland Security circulating a post on Twitter over the weekend declaring that spring break was under siege. Yes, spring break is in danger. Blaming long lines at the airports on what they say is the Democrats' DHS shutdown. Of course, Republicans hold a majority in both houses, and they could get their act together and do something about this, but they won't. But they go on to blame the long lines at the airports on Democrats, and how dare they hold spring break, that sacred spring break, hostage for political points. Now, a giant Middle Eastern war has never, of course, created any sort of tie-ups at security lines at airports around the world. That couldn't possibly be to blame. And what can I tell you? Good luck to the spinmeisters over there trying to get the college kids to say, oh, yes, the funding gap caused by the failure to pass the fiscal year 2026 Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act. I know exactly why the lines are long here, as opposed to Trump-Iran war, which I think they will get a lot faster and is easier to spell. I'll give it that much. Greg Dworkin is here. He introduced himself to the crowd right away. It's one of the hazards of engineering the show with music going, and then the music goes away, and then All right, your mic's on. Hey, good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning.
It's no big deal.
I don't get the reference exactly.
Oh,
but
it was
sure. My microphone was on. What did I do?
Just like wake up in the morning and go.
Like I sat down.
Yeah. You made that was one of our favorites. The throat clearing.
It's okay.
Yeah, the mic was on, and it was, but it came at that quiet moment in between the music and me saying hey and covering it all up. So, all right. Well,
the part where I said, "Hey, is this thing on?"
Yeah, exactly. Good goddamn microphone doesn't work.
How do you tell the difference between the lines at airports due to some obscure political administrative act that hasn't been done yet?
Yeah.
And lines at the gas station if you want to drive there?
Well, that's Democrats
which is
too.
Clearly done by the Iran war.
Mm-hmm.
So, sure, I mean, there's no way that you're going to be able to blame Democrats, and everybody knows the war is increasing the price of rocket fuel, jet fuel. And,
what? That's my spit take.
It's the gas. I mean, you can't go anywhere without it being Trump's prices.
Yes. Well, I mean, the Trump prices.
You want to blame it on
a...
Democrats? Good luck on that. Everybody knows it's LBJ. Oh, speaking of LBJ, I got something for you to play because,
yes,
we got to start with music
and boomers.
And alas, we've lost Country Joe.
We have. That's true. And like we were saying, I guess it doesn't surprise me that the college Republicans at Tennessee have no idea that there might have been boomers who were against the war. But as it turns out, they recorded some of them.
This was an era, and I am of it, and the idea that
I am
boots
aware
on the ground somewhere else means nothing is just wrong. That's Country Joe will tell you.
Boots on the ground has been a third rail for 50 plus years, and here's the reason. As it happens. All right, so yes, great loss, Country Joe. I'm aware of this song. My dad would play this song for me all the time. And then I guess you're not. I guess as a little kid, he was kind of like, well, don't pay attention to do pay attention, but don't be worried about the fact what comes first in this song. All right, I'm ready to roll, and I'll even give you all a chance to plug your ears at the appropriate moment. I don't think everyone knows.
Give me an F. Give me a U. Give me a C.
Can you figure this out?
Hey. Now this is good stuff.
Everyone knows about this.
What's that spell?
Well, he was very enthused about this. Now, I will pause this at this point. That's true, too. And he was asking underage girls at the time what that spelled. The great thing about this is FCC-wise, one, it doesn't matter for us. And two, even if it did, well, what does it spell? I don't even know what that is. How do you spell? Okay, well, that's one of the things about crowd noise. I'm not certain. I think that was just basically like, well, this will get us in trouble, so I'm doing it. And then it had nothing to do with the actual song, which comes next, which is also fantastic. And I can roll that.
It gets the crowd on your side.
Yes,
I
guess
what time you went on.
That's
9
true.
9 a.m.
Right, yeah, you gotta get the crowd awake. Okay. And if you're not familiar with the song...
You big strong man, Uncle Sam needs your help again. Got himself in a terrible jam way down yonder in Vietnam. Put down your books and pick up a gun. We're gonna have a whole lot of fun. And it's 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. The next stop is Vietnam. And it's 5, 6, 7. Open up the pearly gates. Well, there ain't no time to wonder why. Whoopee, we're all gonna die. Now come on, Wall Street, don't be slow. Man, this is war a go-go. There's plenty good money to be made, supplying the army with the tools of the trade. Just hope and pray that if they drop the bomb, they drop it on the Viet Cong. And it's 1, 2,
as opposed to a girls' school.
Yes, right. Now, you get the idea, certainly. By the way, great crowd shots there, too. White kids enthusiastically singing along. The first shot of young black man, I think, of the crowd just basically like shaking his head like it's funny, but I may be going sooner than the rest of you here.
This Phil Oak's Draft Dodger Rag, and of course Bob Dylan's Masters of War. I mean, these are all anthems.
Sure. And for the youth of today that haven't caught up, I think they now understand a little bit more about Bob Dylan because they made a movie for you. So if you needed to catch up that way out, so now it's time to invest in the Country Joe biopic if there's a chance. All right.
So stuff's happening.
Yes.
There's election stuff. There's going to be more election stuff tomorrow. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat is up for election tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. What are they fighting
still,
for?
Elections passed. There's a fellow named Phil Berger. I think he's majority leader in the Senate in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I think he lost his primary by like 14 votes or something.
Oh, close. 100. Slightly
close.
undercooked
Have to do
Phil
a
Berger.
recount, but he's Trump. He was Trump
ish
endorsed.
Endorsed. Okay. Trump backed.
And lost anyway to a sheriff who's even more right than him, but the sheriff's a clown, and Berger is the majority leader of the Senate, knows what he's doing. So I'll take that trade.
Yeah, not a small chance that Trump will just say, no, I was also backing him, and he's my guy. Yeah. Which is what he'll do in Texas Senate, too.
So folks in North Carolina say, look, the thing is, Berger knows what he's doing and he's evil, so good to have him out.
I guess, yeah. So, okay, a clown, it could destroy everything, but it's not up to us. It was a primary. Sorry. We don't get a choice.
So that's, there's things happening out there, and everybody says, well, doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make it. Yeah, well, actually it does.
Yeah. What can I tell you? What is it? We'll be watching prices spike again. I mean, they've spiked already and they haven't come back down. They've been, I guess, able to ignore it politically, but gas pump prices, I guess, we're primed, by the way, with like 40, 50 years of...
Like priming the pump.
Understanding how this is going. Yes, no pun necessarily intended, but, I guess it really is. But everybody knows that this is a sign of what happens when the United States starts wars, because I don't think we've started one that didn't involve oil in quite a while. We haven't had a really good moralist crusade war for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, remember Iraq, no blood for oil? Well, this one may actually be blood for oil.
Yeah, and we're not necessarily going to get that oil either. It's all raining down in Tehran at the moment. And, the first week of this thing has been just disastrous PR. Trump, I guess, doing his best on his onboard Air Force One press, whatever they call that thing, where he comes out of the private room and says things to the press, and they say, oh, my God, I can't believe he just said that, and then write it down. Iran, the elementary school that was targeted. No, Iran did that. And
not only did the U.S. do that, but it appears that it was an AI sort of thing. It was one of those deliberate double taps that qualifies for possible war crimes, where you hit a place, you hope people gather there for whatever reason, then you hit it again on purpose.
Yes.
And if that was AI generated, that just adds fuel to the entire discussion about whether Anthropic and AI over at the Department of Defense is all on the up and up, and what's going on here? And is this the Matrix?
Damn close. Yeah, apparently a school was very... a lot of the kids there were children of high-ranking military, allegedly. And I guess the hope was that rescuers/parents would congregate around the site to try to figure out what's going on and see if anybody could be rescued from the site. And they would then hit it, and then they'd take out military family, although they ended up probably taking out moms and now furious senior military dads. Well, what can you say? They have motivation.
Yeah, well, of course, and we have mini Ayatollah, who is the son of the late Ayatollah.
Yes.
And just as, the king is dead, long live the king kind of thing. So if Trump thinks that he can pick the leader of Iran, that's not happening.
No, and he does think that, which is amazing. And then right going into the weekend, he made some statement that I need to be involved in choosing. There has to be a role for me in choosing the new leader of Iran. Like, that it's not like a West Coast state, Iran. It's another country.
Because I'm the emperor of the world, and I get to start everything.
Nate
Silver had a quote
crazy.
that I thought was had an inconceivable quote that I think is worth mentioning. He said, "Never start a bombing campaign that will completely halt shipping in the Strait of Hormuz." Is right up there with never get involved in a land war in Asia in terms of classic blunders.
Yes, I mean, on the other hand, unavoidable. There's no such thing as a oil tide bombing war that doesn't involve closing the Straits of Hormuz. If you bomb,
but the Strait of Hormuz has actually never been closed. It's always been a threat.
Yeah,
this is closed now. As we said last week, it isn't just oil that passes through there; it's fertilizer and food.
Did we say that? Good. All right. I don't. It's a tight fit. It really is, and we've come pretty close to closure where it was anything under than like 50% chance we're going to make it through here.
Closure or something like that. This is like a long-standing closure, and this is bad. So
no one's risking it. The weapons at the point there that can close it are that much better. It used to be something you could. With an escort, you could run the risk. Let's run the straits, and we could probably knock down whatever's coming. And not quite so sure anymore. Much faster.
Well, it's worse than that. The entire Mideast geopolitical structure is based around the idea that the U.S. will defend the Strait of Hormuz and keep it open.
Yes.
That's why the Saudis and their buddies all, align with the U.S. If the U.S. can't do that, what's the point?
I don't know. It's amazing, though. What happens when you find out
the Middle East? There's your shake-up of the Middle East. Congratulations.
Yeah. You made a deal with the undealable guy.
Yeah.
He's just not going to work
Lemon
for you.
Sturgis writes on X on Twitter, so far, this Iran operation is a cascade of worst-case outcomes. Iran effectively closes the Strait of Hormuz, collapsing tanker traffic by 80 to 90%, sending oil prices from 65 to 110 in just over a week. U.S. operational costs $1 billion a day. Iranian drone and missile attacks kill 7 Americans, wound 18. A likely U.S. strike on February 28th hit the Shajareya Taibeh Girls Elementary School, killing about 175 civilians, mostly schoolgirls, aged 7 to 12. Kuwait was expected to have an 18-day storage facility availability before the cuts, but now it's reducing oil output because they're not going to have any place to put it since it can't leave. Iraqi oil production from its main southern fields is collapsed by 70%. Qatar's energy minister warned Gulf exporters may halt production within days, potentially spiking oil $150 a barrel, not inconceivable. U.S. Embassy evacuations collapsed in disaster. State Department delayed approvals 1 to 4 days. Facilities were struck. Thousands were stranded. We played that phone call saying you're on your own. Could have been Kenneth Mars from Blazing Saddles. Treasury issued a 30-day waiver allowing India to continue purchasing Russian oil. So Russia's making off like a bandit on this. Oil prices go up, and they are a gas station with nuclear weapons, so they're very happy about that.
They get to sell now.
Iran's supreme leader has been replaced by his more hardline son, Mojtaba Khamenei, and with Iran likely heavily protecting him, Trump's likely push to remove him could take time. The Atlanta Fed's GDP Now estimate for quarter one plunged from 3% growth to 2% growth, 2.1% to be accurate. U.S. gas prices jumped from about $2.95 to $3.40. U.S. stocks fall about 2 to 3%. Despite hopes the strikes might trigger regime collapse, protests so far are nowhere near the scale of the January nationwide uprising because Trump acted too late. The Fed's ability to cut rates is constrained even with weak jobs data, as surging oil has pushed up inflation expectations. So basically, the U.S. economy is somewhat screwed. Patrick DeHaan, the Gas Buddy guy, is a great person to follow for news, and notes that countries that rely on the Strait are facing the reality there's nowhere for their oil production to go. They have minimal pipelines that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. One goes directly to the Gulf of Oman at the end of the strait, but it's hard to get enough oil to go there, and there aren't really ways to bypass it. You can try doing the other side of Saudi Arabia, but it just doesn't work. 5 states now seeing an average diesel price skyrocket by over $1 a gallon. Now that's important because diesel fuels trucks, trucks fuel the economy.
Yeah, diesel trucks bring us
Patrick Tehran, again,
gas.
the gas buddy guy. Look at these biggest weekly changes in average diesel prices. Texas up $1.11, North Carolina up $1.11, Tennessee up $1.10, Georgia up $1.08, Mississippi up $1.05. So these are just changes in average diesel prices, $1 added to whatever it costs now. So it's going to be up to $5 a gallon.
Yeah.
From $3.69. This is a big deal and affects the economy.
Everything moves by diesel, whether by truck or by train.
That's
Those
right.
things all move on diesel.
As Joe Biden might say, it's a BFD there. So
yeah.
Stuff
Well, a strategic American presidency could have planned.
A strategic genius like Trump might have filled the strategic oil reserve. Biden sold it when it was high, and Trump could have filled it when it was low.
That's what you're supposed to do, I understand.
Because he didn't think through what would happen next week any more than the State Department under Marco Rubio planned a disastrous evacuation from the Middle East, which was way worse than what happened in Afghanistan, except the media isn't covering it because they hated Joe Biden and they don't hate Trump.
I guess so. And they weren't there. Were probably a couple of journalists on the ground in Afghanistan covering it. They didn't know to try to get to all these states. But there's plenty of influencers doing TikToks about their complaints about getting out of there. The lines are long there.
White House helps MAGA influencers, including famous dog walker, flee Middle East war zone on private jets. So they got out.
I was a little confused about that. Is she a famous dog walker? I did notice that they labeled her dog walker in there.
Dog walker
and I was like,
Sarah Dather.
Yeah, but is she famous for having been on that flight, or does she walk famous dogs? What's the story there? I think my quick read of that story was that the MAGA influencer managed to get the White House to shake a jet loose from somewhere, and I guess this guy saw her pleas for help in social media and said, "Come on, I'll give you a ride home." Or was it she walk his dogs, and that's how he knew her? I don't know.
She's a famous Dallas dog walker. She was stuck in Doha, and Trump helped her get out.
I guess there's a lot of
Because she's also, by the way, a Trump advisor.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense. I was like, well, if you're walking you've got to be walking a lot of dogs to afford to decide to, take a week in Doha or whatever.
These
if
are
that's
all
what
Trump
was
influencers.
I see.
This is the stuff where you go on TikTok, and I walk dogs, by the way, support Donald Trump. And here I am walking my dog named Donald Trump, that kind of thing.
All right. Yeah, I begin to see the picture. Okay. Those people got out. State Department did not because we hate American
but you don't know about them because you're an
civil servants. Right. I guess not. I don't know. All right. Well,
if you're an unk, I'm a grand unk.
I guess so. Famous dog walkers. All right. I believe it could happen.
Right. This is the Wall Street Journal. Americans stranded in the Middle East say U.S. left them to fend for themselves. Where is the American State Department? Absolutely pathetic.
What are you kidding?
What did they do? They rented a New England Patriots plane.
Yes, I saw a photo.
They didn't have enough planes to do everything else. The problem is, you can't land because Iran was attacking airports. So
I don't know where.
It was a mess. They just hadn't planned for it, and they were just completely unhelpful for days.
The Patriots, but that plane gets a lot of use.
Whether the evacuation efforts have caught up or not, I don't know. But big mess.
Yeah, I don't know either, and I'm sure there are some wonderful people who somehow found themselves in Abu Dhabi and Dubai at the time, but they are far outnumbered by the terrible people who are always going there. And war is hell. What can I tell you?
So this is Greg Sargent writing on March 7th, 2 days ago. Donald Trump's presidency is in free fall. Republicans typically lead on the economy, national security, and immigration. Trump is squandering the GOP's traditional strength on all three. Consider three of the biggest developments in our politics right now. We learned that the economy lost 92,000 jobs in February, capstone to a terrible year in job creation. Biden created jobs. Democrats create jobs. Trump, not so much. President Trump has fired widely despised Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. It's funny. Now that she's out, you can describe her as widely despised. She was, but you weren't allowed to say that while she was there.
Yeah, there were just, I don't know, rules against it somehow.
And reports are indicating the killing of scores of Iranian schoolchildren might have been the handiwork of the U.S. What links these things? In addition to the massive human toll, they suggest that Trump is about to pull off a unique trifecta. He's squandering the advantage he and Republicans have enjoyed in recent years on three major GOP-friendly issues: the economy, immigration, and national security. This isn't meant as a political gotcha. It's important ideological and policy implications. When Trump took office last year, it was reasonable to fear that the American public would rally behind mass deportations and tariffs. It has embraced two of the main tenets of right-wing nationalism. Meanwhile, the launch of the largest military attack in the Middle East in decades might have plausibly produced a rally around the war president effect. None of it's happening. And that's significant in not-so-obvious ways. Let's start with Trump and national security. According to an extraordinary video analysis by the New York Times, the horrific bombing of an elementary school in southern Iran killed 175 people, many children, occurred while the U.S. was conducting missile strikes in the area aimed at a nearby Iranian naval base. What's more, Reuters reports military investigators now believe U.S. forces likely bombed the school. You can suspend, and we should suspend final judgment, of course, but it's looking very much like this atrocity is a result of Trump's war. And when we learn about it, there's going to be more. You know, again, Country Joe, Miley, remember what happened in Vietnam. Now look at this in the context of remarks from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller. Hegseth recently declared the U.S. is dispensing with stupid rules of engagement and will no longer fight politically correct wars.
Oh, I see.
Miller recently enthused that Trump's military doesn't have its hands tied behind its back, mocked the idea of human rights, and insisted that its strength and force and power is all that matter. But now we know why we have constraints. More after the break.
Yes, it usually helps you prevent things like this from happening, or at least makes you concerned that they might happen, so that when you're planning, you ask questions. Could this happen? Let's try and make sure it doesn't.
In Country Joe terms, FAFO.
Yeah, I guess so.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Answer, by the way, both. Just viewing the map once again of the Straits of Hormuz and marveling at how insane the navigation is, and how long the Iranian coastline is up and down the entirety of the Persian Gulf and the entirety of the Gulf of Oman. And
if you're looking at the map, do you see where Saudi Arabia sort of stops at the southern end of the peninsula there?
Yemen.
And there's Oman. There's a couple of other countries there.
Yeah, Oman, Yemen.
Yeah, well, that was so Saudi government clearly planned poorly when they designed their country and put in an application to be on the map. They should have taken over the entire peninsula so that they could have outlets.
That would have been a great idea.
For some reason they didn't. I don't understand why.
Well, the reason was large armed bands of Arabs from other families shooting at them. Remembering that, of course, Saudi Arabia is Saudi-ish Arabia because it's the Saud family. This is how much the Saud family was able to grab for themselves. They wanted to have, I'm sure, all of that, but instead dotted along the coasts where people had, access to food sources and didn't really need to be dependent on them.
Things to say about it, I suppose.
Yes, so they fought, and a bit, look at the whole of the geography. What is Kuwait doing there? What is Bahrain doing there? What is this little peninsula of Qatar doing there? Why? This is as far as their horses and camels and guns could take them, and then, by about 1930, if you haven't killed them yet, I think they're just going to have their own emirates. Fine. Yeah. We'll settle in over here.
It reminds me of the old Woody Allen movie, What's Up, Tiger? A country applied to the UN to be a new country, but until it's approved, all the people and buildings are in boxes, stored. This actually happened. So I want to go back to the New Republic.
All right.
This is Greg Sargent writing, "We're now learning why we have the sort of constraints on military conduct these men ridicule. Trump, Miller, and Hicks' FAFO approach to the U.S. official government force and violence comes with considerable risk. Democratic Congressman Adam Smith told me." He has something about the invisible hand of the market to say. "Employing the acronym FAFO, you know what that stands for. I don't need to spell it out for you.
You can, though.
Atrocities like the school bombing," he added, "show the perils that come when we brazenly dismiss rules of engagement designed to protect the lives and rights of civilians."
Yes.
Meanwhile, G. Elliott Morris points out that this is one of the most unpopular wars. Usually you have a rally round effect, but it's not happening. A CNN poll just showed 59% don't trust Trump to make the right decisions regarding the use of force in Iran, suggesting already entrenched skepticism. In short, Trump has no built-in national security advantage. If anything, he's viewed as bad on this. And that's important. Meanwhile, Noam's firing is partly a response to public anger over Trump's invasion of Minneapolis, but it won't solve his deeper problem as long as the underlying agenda remains Stephen Miller's dream of national ethnic reengineering. Trump will tank on the issue. The durable public backlash is the big story here. Now, none of this guarantees a Democratic win this fall. Rebound remains possible. You always have to add that. But George W. Bush's fate is beckoning. And meanwhile, NBC comes out with a poll over the weekend. Trump struggles on immigration, prices, and Iran as Democrats hold a midterm edge. Job performance, approval 44, disapprove 54, approval in October of 2025, 43-55. He's pretty much stuck where he is. He never goes up. He only goes down.
Yeah.
So that's notable. Voters give Trump poor marks for his handling of immigration. Majorities of registered voters disapprove of how Trump has handled the issues that defined his first months of his term. And Democrats maintain an edge, 50-44, in terms of who the public wants to control Congress. Now, Brendan Nyan, political scientist, notes that rally effects, which Americans skipped this war, are largely driven by cues from the, quote, opposition, end quote. And Democrats are not supporting the war. So Trump made no case for war. He rallied no Democrats to his side. He got no boost. So that's why things look static.
Yes.
He still hasn't explained why he's doing what he's doing. And it's, in that regard, just not working.
Yeah, I wonder if, I don't know whether Trump gave it any thought at all, but I guess to the extent that he did, the most I could believe him giving to it is, well, why are we doing this? Well, Iran. Like, everybody knows Iran. He is, of course, stuck in that era mentally where Iran was on everybody's mind. And to the extent that anybody thinks about them at all over the past 40 years, it's always in that context. And I guess he thought, one, he's the dictator and what I say goes. And two, everybody knows about Iran and that they're bad. We've been calling them a part of the axis of evil, for God's sake, since George W. Bush. The immediate previous Republican president who also, threatened to do the same thing. I don't know. I guess he thought it was automatic, but maybe people were tired of 40 years of war.
Well, stock market is now down 500 points today.
That's a good number.
Yeah. I mean, it's 9:30. That's in the first 6 minutes.
Yeah, and I think the futures were way down, so there was no escaping a huge plummet at the beginning of today's session. And it'll get 15 points back, and they'll say, see, it's a rally.
Right. So it initially went down 1,000 points. Now it's rallied back to only being down 500 points.
Oh, yes.
But this is a long-term issue because Trump basically has no long-term plans.
That's true.
He can't plan. Because
relatedly, I guess. Relatedly, but only because it's actually not related, but they insisted that it was related. I guess this means Jeffrey Epstein is relevant again because the Dow is no longer at 50,000. So now we can investigate, I guess, Pam.
Right.
The Dow is over 42,000.
I want to talk a little bit about James Tallarico, and not because I want to rub it in the face of Jasmine Crockett supporters.
She's endorsed him.
She's great.
She's okay.
Her campaign, I don't think, was, but Tallarico wins.
Yeah.
And it's important, of course, to consolidate behind the winner if you want any chance to win Texas.
And she has.
A poll out basically showing Tallarico tied. It's PPP. With both Cornyn winning by a point or so and Paxton winning by a couple of points. I don't think there's any question that, in my mind, that Paxton is on track to win his runoff. And it's interesting that Trump has threatened to endorse somebody and the other guy should drop out, but he hasn't. Don't you think today would be a good day to endorse John Cornyn and tie him to the Iraq War, the Iran War?
I guess so. Whatever war, that would be a good time for that right now.
But he hasn't. He hasn't done it. Why hasn't he done it?
He's mad about Cornyn, I'm sure. And it's very weird.
You're telling me to do so. I hate being told what to do. I'm the king. I decide what to do.
There's that. I'm very busy right now doing nothing.
And what if I endorse him and he loses?
Yes, right. Well, then you
because all the polls say he's losing. I don't know. Maybe this isn't a good idea. I don't know.
I don't know what to do. I
said I'd endorse somebody. Maybe I'll endorse the other guy.
Right. Okay.
The other guy said he's running anyway, even if I endorse Cornyn. So that's bad. I have to punish him. But how? He's winning. I like winners. I don't like losers. What do I do?
He really doesn't know how to handle this. Paxton is like, it's very, he's just got his own sort of center of evil gravity, and it must be disturbing to Trump.
It's that MAGA hates Cornyn for whatever reason.
Well, because he's just milquetoast to them, I'm sure. But, even so, Paxton doesn't, I don't know, national MAGA doesn't particularly seem to like Paxton that much either. Texas MAGA is sold, obviously, and that's the only one that matters at the moment. Yeah.
They love him to death.
But it is weird. Trump seems genuinely cautious about Paxton. I think like I say, he radiates his own independent evil that spooks Trump a little bit. Wait a minute, I recognize this vibration, but I'm not causing it. I
can't control him, and if I endorse Cornyn and Paxton wins, I look like a loser, and I hate that. I can't deal with that. In fact, I can't deal with losing the Iran war, and therefore, even though nothing happened the way I expected, and even blaming Israel isn't helping, maybe, I don't know, I better do an LBJ and bomb them some more, because otherwise it would be publicly humiliating if I accept anything less than total and complete something.
Yes. Oh, he's already said, by the way, we're holding out for unconditional surrender from Iran, and then send out Caroline Leavitt to say, to define unconditional surrender. It's whatever Trump he says it is later.
Unconditional surrender. It means that our commander-in-chief, who knows all the facts, gets to decide what unconditional surrender is.
Yeah.
Because now, not
only
is he the ruler of the United States and the world, he also rules the English language.
Sure. Exactly. If blowing up the White House, is unconditional surrender, what can I tell you? He's a very smart guy. He made a great deal.
Right. So why is the FBI clamping down on warnings about terrorist attacks sparked by this Iranian war?
Because Trump wants terrorist attacks so he can take over elections?
That's a maybe.
Just plain, I don't want to make it look like we're worried about anything, or don't say anything bad could happen, or I don't know, or right all the way up until if there's a terrorist attack and we prevent it, then we can't rally behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely of the school of don't attribute something to malice when sheer incompetence explains everything.
Yeah.
But, just weird stuff. So let's talk about Texas just a little bit. There's this fascinating piece here, several, actually. You can dissect it, how Tallarico won Texas Democrats with love, luck, and a little restraint, carefully disciplined campaign that capitalized on viral media, learned from Mamdani, and then did what he needed to do, got lucky with the Stephen Colbert thing. There's this that was in the New York Times. This is the Washington Post. Texas primaries raised GOP alarm about Latino voters. Strong Democratic turnout last week in heavily Latino parts of Texas has some Republicans fearing they'll struggle to maintain the coalition Trump built in 2024. The Trump coalition in 2024 is just falling apart, as Greg Sargent was noted. But the thing that I found most interesting maybe is David French's piece. Religious conservative, remember, David French. Nice guy. He is a nice guy, and he's the never-Trumper conservative that you wish conservatives were instead of what they actually are, which is MAGA. James Tallarico is a Christian X-ray, he writes.
Christian X-ray. All right, let me hear it.
These days, he says, I'm asked more about James Tallarico than I'm asked about any politician not named Donald Trump. He's a 36-year-old Texas state representative. He's young.
Yeah, barely
and the Democratic
eligible.
Party's latest and greatest hope for winning its first statewide election there in more than 30 years. He's also one of the most faith-forward politicians in the U.S. He doesn't just root his policies and ideology in Christian beliefs. He's a seminarian willing to dive deep into theology. When he's arguing with the religious right about Christian nationalism, for example, he makes a specifically Christian argument to counter a poisonous Christian movement. Jesus liberates, he said in a sermon in 2023. Christian nationalism controls. Jesus saves. Christian nationalism kills. Esposito puts in the rebound. I had to say that, Boston.
Okay.
Jesus started a universal movement based on mutual love. Christian nationalism is a sectarian movement based on mutual hate. The same thing applies to his discussions about specific government policies. Just as Christian conservatives root their arguments about immigration and abortion in Scripture, so does Tallarico. It's remarkable to me, Tallarico said to Ezra Klein, that you have an entire political movement using Christianity to prioritize two issues Jesus never talked about. And so I'm not saying they're not important. I think both of these issues are very important. But to focus on these two things, instead of feeding the hungry and healing the sick and welcoming the stranger, that's what Scripture says. To me, it's just mind-blowing. So when David French, hear Tallarico speak about faith, I alternate between agreement and disagreement. He's spot on about the dangers of Christian nationalism, but I can't help but respond to his arguments about the priority of abortion by asking, why can't we do all of this? And that's hardly the only disagreement between us, but these disagreements are to be expected. Remember, David French is a conservative, deep conservative. Tallarico is a political and religious progressive. I'm a political and religious conservative, but focusing on these disagreements misses the reason I'm asked about him so much. He isn't just making arguments, he's giving people hope, and I think I know why. Put simply, if the primary American divide is between right and left, Tallarico isn't interesting. Okay. White evangelicals might be overwhelmingly Republican, but American Christians are remarkably diverse, and we've been arguing with one another for a long time. But if the primary American divide is between decent and indecent, then the equation changes and Tallarico shines. And, me, not David French, if MAGA is really that indecent, and they are, bloodlust, nasty people, then Tallarico gives a different look at what they claim are the reasons for why they are the way they are. And that's why I think it's so important. And that's what he means about holding up Tallarico and doing an X-ray on him. Because if you go deep inside and see what he's doing, it's really important.
Okay.
He's one of the few openly Christian politicians in the U.S. who acts like a Christian, and by acting like a Christian, reveals a profound contrast with so many members of MAGA Christian movement that's dominated American political life for 10 years. For too long, we've evaluated Christians in politics primarily through their policy. But that's backwards. One of the first things to notice about the Bible is the Bible contains remarkably few political mandates. You don't know from the Bible what the tax rate should be or welfare programs, right? The Bible is politics, and it doesn't do policy or procedure.
Right. Well, in some cases,
you need Robert's Rule of Orders for that, the real Bible, but not the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible is about guidance. It's not about procedure. And so David French is making the point that you guys are hung up on procedure. The Bible doesn't say take over school boards.
True.
The Bible says welcome the stranger and love thy neighbor.
Yes. Well, I mean, it does. But, we have sort of a 1,000-year history of, we want to kill the stranger. Let's do that instead. It's kind of been a long-standing tenet of Christianity in the West.
So David French, the religious conservative, says, I'm reminded of 3 related concepts: orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and orthocardia.
Okay. This is what kids are talking about.
Orthodoxy is the term for the traditional belief in any given tradition. Orthopraxy means righteous conduct.
All right.
And that's a tradition in many religions. It's important to do what's right rather than the superficial, trappings of pretending to believe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Watch what I do, not what I say, that kind of thing. And orthopraxy refers to righteous conduct.
Mm-hmm.
And the final word is the most important, even if it's the most obscure. Orthocardia means having a right heart. As opposed to dextrocardia. Having a left heart.
Yeah, right? I guess so.
In essence, it means that our beliefs and behaviors flow from our heart, and that a right posture toward God and man both makes us eager to learn God's truth, driving us toward orthodoxy, and eager to love our neighbor, pointing us to orthopraxy, do righteous things.
Okay.
The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks, said Jesus. And Tallarico speaks this way, and I know there are people who register these words deeply. To be clear, the answer to hate and division isn't becoming mild-mannered and milquetoast. It's a combination of conviction and compassion. And, if Tallarico wears his religion on his sleeve, well, so does Ralph Warnock, and so did Martin Luther King, so did Jesse Jackson, so did Mother Teresa. Nothing wrong with any of that. They're all good examples, and way better examples than the hate-filled preaching that happens that's MAGA endorsed. So I think it's really important. And does that appeal to Texans? Well, enough so he won the primary, and the polls say he's pretty much tied with the Republican versions. And so there's going to be a very, very interesting election here with a lot of this stuff being centered, and so it should be. So yes, I think David French is right to concentrate on a lot of this stuff.
Certainly, yes, that'll be central to the way the contest unfolds. I don't know that the taxonomy of the various different orthodoxies will work with everybody. I don't know that the kids will be discussing that on TikTok, but
that's just David French. Be good, and that beats being bad.
That's a better way of putting it.
To understand that if the Bible says "welcome the stranger," then Kristi Noem's way of doing it and Stephen Miller's way of doing it ain't it. So I think that's fine. He goes on to write,
that's clear
we know
enough.
The Trump era will end. We don't know how. Political scientists speak of thermostatic reaction, often reacting against the party in power, and there's different ways this can work. You can react against ruling party ideology by swinging right or left, but what if the coming thermostatic reaction isn't about ideology at all? It's about character. What if we're seeing a 21st century version of the American public's movement away from Richard Nixon toward Jimmy Carter?
Yeah.
But that's why
Carter
won.
Fan.
You may have issues with his presidency.
I do not.
But Carter was the anti-Nixon.
Yes. And I assume French was the great exception to the last, 50 years of Carter hate. among Republicans, and holding him up as all you had to do was invoke the name, and everybody would moan and groan, and we don't want whatever it is, we don't want that again. Oh,
yeah, because
a moral
Carter
presidency.
Well, the Democrats won, and Republicans thought Richard Nixon was the beginning of 50 years of Republican rule.
Yes. Well, anyway.
So David French,
Yes.
concludes by saying this will end when our politicians, the Christian politicians, forsake cruelty for compassion. Tallarico may have a moment. And so, again, he's got an uphill climb in Texas. There's no question about it. But you add that to Latino voters who have their own constituency. They're very different than Republicans and Democrats and don't necessarily see things in terms of left and right. They are culturally conservative, but they also are very religious, and they understand what Tallarico's saying and hear it in ways that we in the Northeast necessarily don't necessarily do. And so it's important. So yeah, he needs a little luck, but he can do it.
Okay. We'll get money too. So send it.
So one other thing I want to throw in here before we're done.
Oh gosh,
is
look at the
Pam
time.
Bondi.
Who? Yes.
She's being subpoenaed by James Comer to show up to the Oversight Committee.
Yeah. I'm not sure what I think will happen there.
She's doing, this is going to be a deposition and not a hearing.
Oh.
Why does that process matter? No 5-minute rule, says Kurt Bardella. She can't grandstand filibuster and then leave. She's there for as long as the committee wants her to be there, and she's got to answer questions under oath.
Yeah, closed, I'm sure.
So it's quite different.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Why did they do that? They felt pressure. What's that about?
Comer feels
the Epstein
pressure?
Files.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess they have to answer to a constituency too. Like, there's certainly plenty of MAGA people still out there, or even regular Republicans, plus everybody on the other side as well, but who are doing it for political reasons. But there's definitely some people who really believe that, or maybe still clinging to the belief that Donald Trump has come to clean out that swamp. And gosh, it's looking more and more like he's not gonna, because he's in it and he's covering up. I guess he feels like he's got to do this. And I don't know. Or maybe it's a flex and I'll come to your deposition. I'll honor your subpoena. And then that could be a play too, right? Then when the Democrats win Congress and subpoena Pam Bondi again, she can say, I've already responded to a subpoena from Congress on this. I don't need to do it again. But I don't know if that will work. Yeah, I mean, legally it shouldn't. It won't make any difference. You subpoena her and she doesn't show up the second time, you can hold her in contempt for that too. But it's just interesting that Comer would bother to do it. He's just rolled over for this whole thing so far. I'm curious. We'll have to wait and see,
really
I suppose.
Interesting, and I don't think it's been discussed enough, and that's why.
We really haven't. Is that in our queue here? I don't have the right screen open.
No, I just happened to see it go by.
All right.
And
see if we can find that.
That is interesting. That's kind of a good point I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah, grab that. We'll park that in the roundup anyway. It belongs in there anyhow. But we should keep an eye on that one. I am curious to find out what Comer thinks he's doing, because so far I don't think he's thought at all about what he's doing. And I'm curious what this might mean, and I'm looking for the most cynical possible reason for it, and I can't find it.
Right.
So, okay. Very interesting. And I'm sure there will be more on, I would predict, if I had to guess, Wednesday.
So I have this little video here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a few minutes. Maybe you can play it. There it is.
All right.
Very, 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 very bottom.
I need to go back to click on that icon. Now click on the other screen that icon. There we go. Kurt Bardella. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yep.
Okay. Got the right one. I'm going to that weird place that the rich guy owns. Oh, it doesn't want to let me in. Isn't that interesting? It has nothing to do with... There we are. It's just it's just a slow computer. I don't think he's watching me. Unless. All right, here we are. Let's see. What's significant about the subpoena of Bondi? Okay, let's find out. We got thing's going to spin for a little while. All right, here we go. Click, click, click. Boom. Who are we listening to? This is
Kurt Bardella.
Kurt Bardella. Okay, Kurt.
Never Trump or conservative.
Huh. All right.
Important thing about this is it's a closed-door deposition. It's not a public hearing. She will not be able to grandstand and filibuster the way she did in the Judiciary Committee meeting a few weeks ago. This is a time where you have unlimited amounts of time. There's no 5-minute rule. There's no, I only have a few minutes to get my question in, so you can run out the clock on me. It's a deposition. The Clintons sat for 8 hours last week on tape. She's going to have to do the same thing. So if she decides to just monologue away, bring up extraneous things, fight back against those answering questions, the person there is going to say, okay, that's nice. Answer the question. We got all day.
He's doing that from the bottom of a well, which is also interesting. Yeah. I think they should let him out for this. He has good things to say. Yeah, that's... What can I tell you? It's unusual.
Right.
It's
and so
true.
Why did they agree to that? I don't know. What's going to happen when she actually does it? I don't know. But interesting stuff.
Yeah, I guess I don't know when the subpoena was issued and how long she has to respond and in what form she has to respond. But yeah, it will be closed, as they said. The other thing about the deposition format is that it's not necessarily the questioners aren't necessarily the members of the committee. You can have counsel do the questioning, and that means a single person, if you want, can continue their questioning and do follow-ups and keep pressing until they get an answer. Not only can she not filibuster the 5 minutes out, but this one person, if you think of a follow-up later, but it's not your turn anymore, like you're out of luck. Not so when committee counsel is doing the questioning. And yeah, they last a long time. Good. Okay, she'll get mad, she'll yell, but I mean, her way out of things is to yell for the camera so that Trump sees her fighting, and there won't be any, well, unless they release video later on, there won't be any live television for him to respond to. So that's a key thing.
Yep.
What are they doing?
That's it for me.
This could work. What are they crazy? Let's go find out why. All right, thanks very much, Greg. I appreciate it, and the music appreciates it.
Should I clear my throat on the way out?
Yes, please. In fact, record a couple minutes of it. Look, it's going to happen. We deal with this all the time. And as a matter of fact, if I had said nothing, well,
I didn't even notice. But, the professional thing was to say nothing. But, we're Kagro in the morning. We do what we want.
Right. I could have left it for the editor upstairs. And okay. In fact, the rest of you who hear this by podcast, what a mystery. We don't even understand what you're talking about.
Well, I didn't in the beginning either.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Man, what a weekend. Come back tomorrow. That wasn't actually what I intended to do. That just happens to be the sound effect that was underneath the button that said that the Zoom call was over, and if I could just press this button, it would get rid of this notice. And when I went to click it, it had disappeared itself already. And so underneath was that sound effect, which he's not coming back tomorrow, so what can I tell you? I've lied to you already. And the next sound effect over is, liar! Of course... Liar! So... Liar! Any number of things we could have gone with on that one. All right. Well, it is wrong. Okay, so let's see. What else is waiting for us to discover in Instapaper? So many things happening. And by the way, I got a note here from Rebecca Romans, who's very happy to have heard her PSA that she prepared for us in the live stream rotation. That means that my file got successfully A, edited, B, distributed to Justice, and C, dropped into the rotation. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for cutting those things. By the way, others, I'd be more than happy to accommodate the messages from others, whether it's encouraging people to contribute via Patreon or any of the other systems by which we collate our support, or asking for people to reminding people that they can make submissions that we can edit up and play on the air. If you've had a story that you thought deserved some time on the air and you'd like to record it, whether it's somebody else's work or even maybe your own essay, and if what's holding you back, I'll just remind you, as we do in all of those PSAs. If what's holding you back is, well, I don't know, or I hate the sound of my own voice, so that's okay. Don't worry about it. Nobody else knows the sound of your voice, and they have no basis upon which to hate it. So it doesn't matter. But two, well, I'll read it and I'll be ahhing and I'll pause, or I'll read something wrong and then I'll correct myself. We'll give it a light editing, sometimes more heavy than others, to compress the time a little bit. But we spend a little bit of time cleaning things up, and we're happy to edit out those ums and ahs or long pauses or restarts on reading something, and do our best to make you sound like a professional correspondent. But whatever might motivate you to join in, it's a great way to support the show. Additionally, right, just cut one of those PSAs. We have the musical beds. You just worry about the audio message and send it on over, and we can edit it up and put some music underneath it and work it into the rotation. And the more voices there are exhorting you to support the show, the better, I think. We'll see. We'll see whether there's a flood of donations thanks to Rebecca's appeal to you. And we always hope that there are. And we thank everybody who continues. The economy being what it is, prices being what they are, and expenses being what they are, it's more important than ever. And certainly, we've been doing this a long time, and we've been enjoying your support for a long time. Yeah, we got to find some ways to increase the revenue, reach out to more people, bring more people in. I think about ways to exploit the platforms better and reach out and bring in more people. But, one of these days it may just be that we say, well, we either have to switch to a couple days a week or something like that, or change the timing of things, because we're just going to have to go out and do more in the outside economy to bring in revenue. And that day may yet come. We'll see. We're crossing our fingers that we can increase the subscription numbers. And I got to find ways of finding a new pool to tap, because your support has been key to keeping things afloat and saying, all right, well, this is a viable concern here, but I can't keep tapping the same people over and over again. That's got to be me. But a little evangelicism couldn't hurt. A little evangelism is the actual word I'm looking for. On your part, maybe there are some people that you know who would absolutely love the show or be willing to give it a try, and maybe they need to be pointed to it. And that's always very helpful. That's the most effective thing that we could be doing, is giving people word of mouth. Tell people that trust you that you should trust us. Why not? How badly could we possibly fail, right? Okay. So at any rate, now that we've tempted fate, back to the compilation here of the news items that I've tucked away, only some of which indicate via Instapaper what the hell they're actually about. There's an awful lot here. And a lot of them were from social media, and I feel like we have to click through to see what they are. Oh, yes, I guess I wanted to share a couple of follow-ups on some earlier stories. I shared with you early last week, and I think we did a pretty good job preparing everybody for what has now become a flood, no pun intended here, a flood of stories about the water dangers in this war. And I don't mean in this case the Straits of Hormuz. I mean the fresh drinking water, the desalination plants that are coming under targeting, and how dangerous that is, and how that's sort of been just internationally exempted from targeting in these wars up until now. And it has to do with international law and the law of war, and that it's a civilian target, and it implicates the tactic of sieges and starvation that are supposedly outlawed by the modern laws of warfare as well. So the exemption is not without explanation. But at any rate, I mentioned this early, and I mentioned to you that Sanho Tree on Blue Sky was the one who brought this to my attention early on, And there were a couple of days there during which I think it was Bloomberg, maybe? Was it Bloomberg that had done this early reporting on it and was kind of the only one discussing it for a couple of days? And now it's sort of opened the floodgates. Everybody's kind of noticed this issue. So the last couple of days and over the weekend, you may have seen it reported all over the place. And that's part of the thing that contributes to that feeling of getting the news early. Even though, the truth of it is we got the news from the news. It's just the network that we tap into online, whether social media or otherwise, has eyes everywhere. And they bring up interesting stuff. And you have to curate a good list on social media to get a good sampling of the things that other people are missing. And then if you have an inclination and a platform like this one to share it with people, yeah. All it is you can get the news early too if you have eyes everywhere. And if you do have eyes everywhere already because you're using social media effectively, add ears to your repertoire and to your information collection and listen to podcasts like this one. And not the big famous stupid ones that are interviewing the same people over and over again either. And that doesn't help you either, as it turns out. Anyway, so Sono Tree had updated something though over the weekend. He's the one who put us on this, and a chain of articles, and now more and more of them over the weekend, talking about the targeting. But I think early in the chain that we discussed last week, there was some indication that there may have been, on the early end of this exchange of bombs, or maybe the even just the claim that there was an exchange of bombings of desalination plants, that this may have begun with, or early on in the chain that there was a hit on desalination plant or plants in Israel, and that may have provided a platform for at least the claim that hitting desalination plants in Iran was retaliation. Though it also seems much clearer that there were desalination plants hit in Arab Persian Gulf states. Anyway, some video circulating early on in these claims and early on in the threads appeared to be, or was being represented as, video of a desalination plant in Israel having been damaged and flooding the nearby streets. And as it turns out, this was once again one of the scourges of social media, really repurposed video from earlier. And it was a flood, yes, at or near a desalination plant, but apparently an incident maybe in December that had something to do with, I'm not certain what the cause was, but it wasn't the claimed bombing. So, one, it may have turned out that, and who knows what the source of this information is, and it may very well have been, who knows, it could certainly have been Israeli government, Israeli intelligence saying, you started it, when in fact they did not. And or it may also have been activists online who just wanted to make this claim, or had heard that there had been an attack in Israel and couldn't find video of it. And you never know what motivates people. Sometimes they see it and they really think that's what they're seeing, and it's a genuine error nonetheless. But apparently no confirmation forthcoming that the claimed desalination plant in Israel has in fact been damaged. At least not yet. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that one out there. Environmental disaster of all kinds. We also did see this get coverage over the weekend, that all of the oil facilities and refineries, etc., that have been hit inside Iran are causing environmental disaster. In fact, causing essentially oil-saturated rain to fall on Tehran. So dark clouds covering the skies there. I'm sure there's plenty of things on fire, and that's got to be the cause of it. And there's mountainous region outside of Tehran that has meteorological effects this way. And so on top of hitting all these targets, including elementary schools and desalination plants, we also have the toxic rain as an issue that I guess they'll be blaming on well, blaming on us, I suppose. And what can I tell you? They may actually be correct in that. Anyway, just keeping an eye on those things. Here is the post from just before the weekend from Sono Tree, targeting desalination plants. That was when we started with. Is an incredible double-edged sword, remember? But this photo that illustrates it from in the Bloomberg piece, I think is supposed to be taken from the Israeli plant, and now it's highly questionable whether that actually happened or whether it happened as earlier reported. Speaking of the reporting and the weird repurposing of video, one of President Trump's alleged, anyway, because now we don't know, I guess, because everything's been thrown into doubt. One of his weekend activities was to attend what they call the dignified transfer, even though he was there, of remains of troops killed so far in the attacks launched by the Iranians in the Middle East. And I guess these troops were casualties of an attack on, was it in Kuwait, where they were stationed and where they were hit, and their remains were returned to the United States. And the drill. The president shows up for these things and participates in the solemn repatriation of their remains, except that this time Donald Trump decided to do it in one of his gaudy Trump-branded USA baseball caps. It wasn't a MAGA hat, but one of the white baseball cap with the gold lettering USA. And, USA, right? But still baseball cap. Ordinarily, you would think, unless the hat is part of a dress uniform, this is one of those times when hats come off, for instance, or you just plain don't show up in a hat. Roughly equivalent to the time that Dick Cheney showed up at memorial services at one of the concentration camps in Germany and showed up, while everybody else was in suit and tie and neat overcoats. It was cold outside, but remember he was in like mukluk boots and a fur hat and just looking rather ridiculous and casual. Well, showing up in a USA baseball cap. USA or not, the baseball cap thing, not to be done. He did give the salute, but, again, where are my tan suit complainers? Well, apparently we found the tan suit complainers, and they were, in fact, appropriately concerned with the breach in protocol, because while everybody else saw the video of Trump galumphing along and reluctantly giving a salute with a baseball cap pulled down over his face, Fox News spent the weekend showing video of an earlier such transfer, apparently dated from December, in which he's not wearing a baseball hat, and telling everybody that it was, in fact, this past Saturday, labeling it with the date and everything, which was an interesting twist on things. And then they were caught doing so, and then they claimed that it was all a big mistake, and we're so sorry, and we didn't mean to do it, but they're still showing the old video. They were apologizing left and right, but they're still showing the wrong video, apparently, on the website and on their TV broadcasts, and it's disrespectful and stupid and mean and unnecessary, but that's how far out of their way they're willing to go for Donald Trump. It's just one of the weird developments of the weekend. Let's see, are there others here? There are at least a few, but I guess we got the wrong page on that one. Sometimes when you're not appropriately logged in, you save what you think is a Blue Sky tweet, but it just basically is saving a link to Blue Sky itself, and that's not helpful, and it leaves behind no trace of what the thing might be. So we'll see whether we stumble upon that story by accident later on in the future. All right, let's see. Big procedural development over the weekend, I guess you could call it. Donald Trump forgetting essentially what presidents do and don't do. And at any rate, he has made an interesting threat, which Reuters covers here, which probably means I'll have to, do I get the whole article here? Maybe. Fantastic. Sometimes they're blocked by paywalls. Trump again presses Congress on voter bill. And reminder, this is the, it's a weird combination of bills, I guess. Now, remember that we had the strange confusion of there was a SAVE Act, and then there was a Save America Act, and then there was a, mega super MAGA Save America Act. I forget what the ultimate bill was supposedly called. Now, Trump is calling for the hardest line of all of these possible bills to be passed, although no one knows which one they're calling it anymore. But he's also wanting to add more things to it, some rather incoherent, if you can believe it, Truth Social posts heading into the weekend and over the weekend, making clear that not only did we have to pass one of these bills, but also it should have some other great things in it, like he wants the Save America Act passed, but also it should have no men and women's sports, and also, he's got some weird transgender stuff that he wants to add to a voting bill. It's a voter suppression bill, of course, as you know. And by the way, Republicans doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on the line that they've been handed by, I guess, one of their focus testers. They have to have ID to buy beer in this country. You should have that. What's the big deal to have ID to vote? Right? Well, there's a number of problems with that analogy, and we've been over them a couple of times, including remember, this is not about having ID to vote. This is about showing proof of citizenship in order to register, and, according to at least one of these bills, showing proof of citizenship at the polls in order to be able to cast a ballot that day, which means bringing passport and or birth certificate with you to the polling place. And once again, just like going to the doctor's office, you got to fill out the same paperwork over and over and over again, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's frustrating and annoying, and it's a waste of time, and it causes long lines, and they don't even have to listen to you. One of the things that's not in the bill is that they have to give you what you came for if you do produce valid ID. That's not in there, and there's no penalties for doing it wrong either. So if you show up with your passport and or birth certificate and show it to them and they just say, sorry, I don't believe you, well, you got a couple hours to make it to a judge and vindicate yourself. Will you get a provisional ballot? Well, by law, you're supposed to, but do you believe you will? Or do you believe they'll count it? Or do you believe they'll treat it properly if you do get one? Well, all big question marks. But on top of all of this, Trump now says he will not sign any legislation of any kind until this, whatever the hell you're going to call it, Save Act, Save America Act, Save Super MAGA America Act, Save the Hell Out of America Act, whatever you're calling it, plus his weird transgender stuff that now has to get thrown in there, is passed. If you don't pass that, I won't sign anything. Well, that sets off all sorts of weird speculation from people who do know, people who don't know, people who don't care what the procedure is. I did see some people say it the right way. Look, I can't ascribe this kind of strategic thinking to Donald Trump, but it's probably worth pointing out to everybody that the president doesn't have to sign legislation in order for it to become effective. The provisions of the Constitution state that the president can't stand in the way unless he's willing to put a veto message on this thing and send it back to Congress. The only time that not signing stands in as a veto is in pocket veto situations at the very end of a session of Congress. Where, we've explained the pocket veto, I think, in the past. When it gets closer to that time, we can re-explain what the pocket veto is. But there's no pocket veto now in the middle of the session. Failure to sign a bill after 10 days, and they count the days oddly, as you may have guessed, but after 10 days, the bill becomes law without the president's signature. That may mean something symbolically to him, but doesn't stop things from becoming law. So is Trump saying, well, I won't sign it? Does that mean that's his way of saying, I'm going to veto everything, except I don't know that I should be more clear about it? Or is it, in fact, a statement that gives him wiggle room if the bill that comes to his desk before the whatever Save the Hell Out of America Act comes to his desk and he wants it to become effective, can he say, well, I said I wasn't going to sign it. I didn't say I was going to block it from becoming effective. That would be remarkably lucid for him. So anyway, nobody knows whether it means he's going to block all legislation and veto things or just not going to sign it, or whether he knows that not signing it is not the same thing as vetoing it. But here's the story from Reuters. Trump again presses Congress on voter bill, says he will not sign on the legislation. Nandita Bose, or Bose perhaps, B-O-S-E, never know how to pronounce that unless it's the speakers. And Steve Holland, unless that's Holland, I don't know. Too much focus on pronunciation. Here's the story. Dateline to Miami, so I guess they had gone down to Florida with the president. U.S. President Donald Trump, they helpfully remind Reuters readers, on Sunday, yesterday, threatened to withhold his signature from any other legislation until Congress passes a Republican-backed voting bill. It's an anti-voting bill, of course. The latest escalation in his push to impose stricter voter requirements ahead of the November midterm elections. Trump, in a post on his Truth Social platform, laid down a tough marker. He's tough. For the Save America Act, they're going to go with that one, which passed the Republican-led House of Representatives in February, but faces an uphill battle in the Senate, also controlled by the Republicans, but which Democrats in the Senate have pretty much promised they will not deliver any votes for, but we'll see. There's really no reason to cave on that one. The measure would need at least 60 votes in the Senate to overcome the chamber's filibuster rules, meaning it needs Democratic support that currently appears unlikely. We'll just let that one stand for now. I, as president, will not sign any other bills until this bill is passed, wrote Trump, who is spending the weekend at his Doral, Florida golf club. I guess so. I don't know whether he was staying over at Doral or not, or sleeping at Pervalago and trucking over to Doral for events there, including the introduction of the Shield of the Americas nonsense, which he spent the weekend on. The Save America bill would require proof of citizenship when registering to vote and would impose criminal penalties on election officials who register anyone without the required documentation. But again, I remind you, no mention of criminal penalties on elections officials who simply, for no good reason, decline to accept the documentation presented by voters. Unclear again whether they have removed the requirement of showing proof of citizenship on voting day in order to get your ballot, or whether they're confused about it or ignoring it. No one can really be sure. We could look at the legislation, but I think it's still also being amended along the way and subject to amendments. And I think in negotiations at one point they indicated that they would drop the proof of citizenship that the Save America Act required at the ballot box. But we're not sure whether that's going to be what gets passed. And it's just never clear what Trump is actually demanding anyway. So, Trump's warning comes days after he threatened to bypass Congress entirely by issuing an executive order to unilaterally impose voter identification requirements if lawmakers fail to act. He has previously attempted to impose similar voter eligibility rules through executive action. We reminded you of that last week, the March 2025 executive order that is only now finally losing in court to pressure for a preliminary injunction to block it from being implemented. But yeah, the worry is, could a second executive order fool willing election officials in Republican states into trying to implement this stuff and say, we didn't understand that an executive order didn't carry the force of law. You'll have to take us to court, and it'll take you a year to get the preliminary injunction you need to stop us. And oops, in the meantime, in less than a year, we've held those elections. That's a problem. A federal judge in 2025 blocked parts of an executive order that sought to require proof of citizenship for voter registration, and that's true, but they appealed, and it was only a temporary restraining order anyway at that, and took a year to get around to getting the same judge to say, yeah, I was serious, I actually meant it. The shifting tactics, floating executive action one week and vowing to block unrelated legislation the next, reflect Trump's efforts to pressure Congress into adopting his preferred election rules. Whether Trump would follow through on his latest vow not to sign legislation that he supports, or otherwise, I guess, was unclear. If lawmakers pass a bill, gotta wait for our music here, if lawmakers pass a bill and he takes no action after 10 days while Congress is in session, the measure becomes law without his signature. I'm glad they mentioned that. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said he supports the voter eligibility legislation, but has resisted calls from Trump and some conservative activists to weaken the Senate's filibuster rules to pass it, saying there's not enough support within the Republican conference, to change the chamber's 60 vote threshold. All right, more after this.
Hi, Kagro in the Morning listeners. This is Rebecca Romans, longtime listener and longtime supporter of the show. Do you love your non-corporatized, completely independent, commercial-free Kagro in the Morning show? Do you stand out among the crowd at the office water cooler when discussing current events because of all the up-to-the-minute news you've been brought by David Waldman? Then it's time to give back a little. David relies on contributions from listeners like you and me to keep this show on the air. Patreon.com is among the easiest ways to make secure recurring monthly donations to support the show. Patreon.com/KagroX will bring you straight to his donation page, where you can sign up for any convenient tier you like. A mere $5 a month. You'll never miss it. Works out to about 25 cents a show. That means that David is making 12.5 cents an hour, which, by coincidence, is exactly what the GOP wants to lower the federal minimum wage to. Once again, David is ahead of the curve. If Patreon.com doesn't sound like your kind of thing, there's always PayPal, or even the Square Cash app. Any way you choose to donate, please choose to donate. And thank you on behalf of David and the rest of us listeners. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. One segment left. We were in the middle of reading the Reuters article about Trump's latest threat to not sign any other legislation until the Save America Act, or maybe some other version of it, is passed. And I mentioned that there was something over the weekend from Trump on Truth Social, which, I don't know. I know I saw it. I know I commented on it. I know that we spoke about it last week, maybe. But, yeah, he's definitely essentially... there it is. As a matter of fact, somebody else was just mentioning it in similar context in 10 Grain, everybody's good friend on Twitter /Blue Sky, who says, President Stupid will hold his breath until he gets a cookie. That's one way of putting it. I wonder if he has, I think, now this is one of several angry Truth Social posts that the president had put up about it. I'll finish the Reuters article first. The Straight News reporting of this thing that we left off, that he has basically said, right, and he's previously tried an executive order in 2025. He's threatening to do another one. The shifting tactics, floating executive action one week and vowing to block unrelated legislation the next, reflect Trump's pressure campaign and effort to pressure Congress into adopting his preferred election rules. Whether Trump would follow through on his latest vow is unclear. There is, of course, the fact that simply not signing bills doesn't actually prevent them from becoming law. John Thune, not enthusiastic about offering to use the nuclear option to pass the Save America Act because he says inside of his own Republican conference he would lose votes on this thing. And if you lose votes, it's just not going to work. You need to put together the 50 plus that would be required to invoke the nuclear option, and he doesn't have enough. And there won't be any Democratic votes for it, right? So Democratic Party leaders say the legislation attempts to suppress the vote. It does. And undermine their electoral chances at a time when they're favored by independent analysts to take control of the House. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said on Saturday the Democrats would not support the bill. He called the legislation Jim Crow 2.0, a reference to the racial segregation laws in the U.S. that restricted black voting rights, and said it would disenfranchise tens of millions of people. If Trump refuses to sign other legislation until it passes, Schumer said, there will be total gridlock in the Senate. And everywhere else, for that matter. Republicans have been jarred by a string of Democratic special election wins, and Trump's last 2 years in office could be complicated if Democrats have a majority in the House. It's a helpful hint to drop as well. Unclear how serious he is about doing that. To highlight the probably unseriousness of it, at the same time, Trump is also demanding of Republicans, and I don't know where the demand of this actually first began, but you may have spotted over the weekend, for instance, Jake Tapper asking Chris Murphy, I think, about this over the weekend. There's an additional demand for $50 billion in emergency spending for the war. Replenishing munitions, doing all the things that you do during a war, whatever they might actually be. But $50 billion, actually probably a pretty low price tag for emergency appropriations to support a war of this magnitude and expense. But at any rate, the normal setup in something like this, Tapper's not wrong to ask it this way. And as annoying as it was to see it framed this way, there's no indication that Tapper buys into that framing. And it's unfortunate because he may at some point. But yeah, there was it was of interest to see the question asked. It was not necessarily the correct assumption that Jake Tapper meant, I believe this. But Tapper, during the interview, I'm sure it comes up at first and asks, what about the $50 billion in emergency appropriations for the war? Murphy saying, look, Democrats don't support this war. So I'm not sure that you'll find support for $50 billion in emergency appropriations, especially the amount of money that got socked away in a slush fund under the Too Big Beautiful Bidets bill. You're not really able to transfer that money from the Department of Homeland Security to the Defense Department. It doesn't really work that way. But this president doesn't really care how much, how these things works. But if you're going to sock away a huge slush fund and then ask for another one for a war that nobody supports, much less the Democrats, you're probably not going to get it. So, but Tapper does ask him, look, that if you vote against an additional $50 billion of funding for operations in Iran, that vote will be cast as you voting against the troops. And I know that irritated everybody, and a lot of people willing to assume the worst about Jake Tapper, and you're not always wrong about that. But it seemed pretty, I don't know, it didn't strike me that way that he was saying, I'll tell everybody you're against the troops. He was saying, that the Republicans are going to say that you're against the troops. So are you prepared to deal with that? Chris Murphy says, I think quite rightly, come on. The American people do not want this war. If you support the troops, you should be voting against this war. Don't send them, right? That's essentially the message. And that's a good answer. And if you are somehow convinced that Tapper thinks the same way as Republicans on that, you could certainly follow it up by saying, well, we're not going to get anywhere. We can't go on. I need you to acknowledge for me, Jake, that you're saying that that's a stupid framing. And it's stupid. You're just wondering, what am I going to do about their stupid framing, right? That's where you're coming from. Because if not, then we really can't continue. But it seemed to me relatively clear that he was saying, that they're going to do this, even without passing judgment on how stupid it is. That that's coming. So are you prepared to deal with it? So anyway, I bring that up next after the Reuters story about his refusing to, allegedly saying he was going to refuse to sign any legislation. I think that might be the only place where there's an argument that he's looking for wiggle room by saying, I didn't say I was going to veto everything. I said I wasn't going to sign anything. And this way, you could, for instance, if the next bill to pass Congress was somehow a $50 billion supplemental appropriation for the war, he's not going to veto that because it isn't the Save America Act. He's going to not sign it and let it become law because he wants that money, even if he thinks he can take it unilaterally elsewhere. I mean, unless he really misunderstands the whole thing very badly. But you never know. So anyway, but that's a sign, I think, of how unserious this whole thing is. You can't demand $50 billion in supplemental emergency funding and then say, I'm not going to sign it. In fact, I'll veto it if it's not the SAVE Act first. And it would be extraordinarily difficult to defend saying, well, I got to have my thing about my weird hang up about transgender issues first, because that's beginning to overshadow what he's calling for in the SAVE Act. Where'd I open up 10 Grains write-up of this? From 10 Grains' own Mock Paper Scissors newsletter/blog, or at some point blurred the line there, but it's a blog. So President Stupid will hold his breath until he gets a cookie. What's the story here? He's grabbed Ron Filipkowski's Blue Sky post saying, I guess there's no reason to vote for a supplemental military appropriation for Trump's war or anything else since he isn't signing anything right now. And here is his threatening Truth Social post. Great job by hardworking Scott Pressler on Fox and Friends talking about using the filibuster or talking filibuster in order to pass the Save America Act, an 88% issue with all voters. And then I think harkens back to the, you need ID to buy beer in this country, which again, bad analogy. You don't have to turn in an ID and sign up ahead of time to be put on the okay to buy beer list. And none of these guys are buying their own beer anyway. So what's the difference? But it's a dumb comparison. There, though, you might find maybe 88% agreement. Should you have to show ID to register to vote? You might even find majority for support, believe it or not, for should you have to show an ID on voting day in order to get a ballot. But that's, by the way, you mostly will have agreement with that based on the idea that, generally speaking, if you produce such an ID, nobody fights with you over whether or not the ID is valid on the spot. And if there's a fight, they just say, give them a provisional ballot and then let's get moving here on this. But if it's going to result in I'm calling the police and you can't have a ballot and, and long lines, I don't think you get your 88% support. Anyway, he continues on saying it must be done immediately. It supersedes everything else. And now, in all caps, must go to the front of the line. I, as president, will not sign other bills until this is passed. And not the watered down version. Go for the gold. Must show voter ID and proof of citizenship. No mail-in ballots, except for military, illness, disability, travel. No men and women sports. What is that doing in here? No men and women. No transgender mutilization. It does say that, mutilization. For children. Do not fail. President Donald J. Trump. No, thank you for your attention to this matter, by the way. He's getting rude about this thing. So there you go. He's basically grafting on the two big, beautiful bidets tactic to everything. I only want to pass a couple of bills in this Congress, and I don't care about anything else. But those bills have to have 55,000 other bills in them. 88% agreement. You got to show ID to vote. Yeah, sort of, maybe, kind of, almost true. P.S. No men and women sports. Wait a second. What? How does that have anything to do with the ID? What does that have to do with voting? No transgender mutilization for children. Everybody hates when they give secret, super expensive operations for kids during school and then send them home, by the way. Nobody needs to stay in the hospital after one of those, which don't happen anyway. I don't know. I mean, it's insane that he's putting those things together. And, I mean, the tactic is obvious. Well, I claim there's 88% support for something about something ID voting. No. Stopping transgender mutilizations in schools. Sure, Jan. They're totally happening, right? Anyway, so a deeply unserious approach to the whole thing. Plus, he's going to throw into the mix something. My weird obsession about transgender people now has to be all of your problem. And I'm going to hide it under the 88% thing. Well, anyway, speaking of stories, I must have socked this one away somewhere. And I don't know if I got a chance to share it with you on Friday, if I knew about it by then, or maybe it wasn't on the radar yet, or I didn't have time to get to it then. But yeah, and I don't see it in Instapaper, so I'm going to have to scroll back in Blue Sky to find it. But basically, for all, for the 88% who allegedly say, what's the big deal? All you got to do is show your ID, right? Hey, you got to buy beer in this country. You got to show your ID. Maybe not. A story from the Atlanta Black Star from March 6th, so it did come out by Friday, but I don't know if we had seen it. Black woman born in U.S. and battling cancer, I may have tried to call this one out at the last minute here, has Social Security benefits revoked after federal agency says she is, quote, not lawfully present in the country. I'm just kind of curious about whether or not I managed to... That feels like one of the articles that I might have called out at the end of the show on Friday and said, everybody take a look at this thing, but we'll see whether it made it into my list or not. I don't think so. Maybe not. Okay, so it'll be very important that you hear about what's going on here and get the word. This a story by, just credits Yasmin F. over in the Atlanta Black Star. We could read a little bit about the background of the Atlanta Black Star at some point. But a Texas woman, Yasmin tells us, and U.S. native who has spent years battling severe diseases is fighting to get her social benefits back from federal officials who removed them after challenging her citizenship. Yes, this is a different venue and a different kind of fight over Social Security benefits and the like, but the fight is being made over the claim that she's not legally in this country, and there's just no other country that she should or could legally be in. She's an American citizen, American born, and just no dispute whatsoever up until this point about her citizenship. But in exchange for something that she should be entitled to under federal law, like voting rights, except there's no federal entitlement to voting, apparently. They just, when push comes to shove, we just don't want to pay for this anymore. Your documents don't mean anything to us. Could they very easily translate that to the voting context? Yes, and it's probably the plan. What's the rest of the story? Ramona Rakestraw, born in 1966 in Dallas County, Texas. We've been talking about Dallas County, Texas lately. The 59-year-old was stricken with kidney disease at age 28. She received a transplant, but in 2024, she was diagnosed with cancer. Why is all of this necessary as background? It's not just about drumming up sympathy for her, although it certainly will. She needs her Medicare and SSI income in order to make ends meet. She's got tremendous medical expenses. She's enrolled in Medicare Part B and has been receiving supplementary security income, that's SSI, for years to support her through her illnesses, according to KDFW. SSI benefits are distributed to people with disabilities or older adults who have little to no streams of income and no financial resources to fall back on. In October of 2025, both her SSI and Medicare benefits were halted, and she was told her immigration status was under review. It's a scary thing to hear these days because they're cracking down on people's immigration status. Only what effing immigration status? She's American, born in America. What else do you want to know? Although Rakestraw was born in the U.S. and has never once traveled or lived outside the country. So it's not even a matter of re-entering the United States under, immigration control, but just nothing. She's American, born here, never left here. Still, for whatever reason, federal officials raised questions about her legal status. I am shocked, Rakestraw said. They told me my immigrant status was being questioned. So I said, I'm not an immigrant. Her Medicare coverage was later restored, but her SSI benefits were not. Only how long did it even take to get the Medicare coverage restored? And how much leeway does someone dependent on those streams have? How many resources do they have available to them to fight for themselves? Rakestraw took her identification and birth certificate to her local Social Security office to clear up the issue. Did it work? Nope. She later received a letter from the federal agency stating, "We cannot pay you benefits because you are not lawfully present in the U.S." That's my income, my whole income, she said. But more to the point, that's effing BS. What the hell are you talking about? Whether I need it for income or not, you're just basically denying my citizenship based on what exactly? It's unclear what prompted the immigration review and the decision to withhold Rakestraw's benefits. The Social Security Administration has not released further details, citing privacy concerns. Good luck getting this resolved inside of the 6-hour voting window. From the time of a recipient's benefits are denied, they have 60 days to appeal the Social Security Administration's decision. Individuals must update their citizenship status, and then the case is reviewed by someone who did not suspend or revoke the benefits. You get a new reviewer. Rakestraw said she completed all the necessary paperwork, filed her appeal, and is now awaiting further contact from the SSA, which is one thing when you're talking about money, but another thing talking about casting a ballot within a very specific window on one day that might be allowed to you in the future to cast your ballot. I have to just take it a day at a time, Rakestraw said. Rakestraw's case reflects a wider upheaval happening within the SSA. Last year, the Trump administration cut off the Social Security benefits of a man who became a naturalized U.S. citizen shortly before Donald Trump took office. According to The Bulwark, he received a letter with the exact phrasing Rakestraw's letter had. "We cannot pay you benefits because you are not lawfully present in the U.S." Shortly after, the Social Security Administration canceled the Social Security numbers of thousands of immigrants granted temporary legal status in the U.S. at the direction of the White House. The decision strips these individuals of their ability to work and receive pay or social benefits and forces financial institutions to cut off access and services. So you don't necessarily have it made if you have your ID available to you and it's not a big deal and it's just like buying beer in this country. It'd be just like buying beer in this country, one, if you didn't have to register ahead of time, but also imagine, I guess, going to buy beer, obviously a sacred right in this country, and you show up at the store and you present your ID and they just take one look at you and say, I don't think your ID is real. Which happens, right, when they actually do suspect that someone's got a fake ID. I mean, maybe buying beer in the U.S. is actually a terrible example because people get rejected for that all the time, and it's basically up to the retailer to decide whether or not they believe your ID. And, I mean, maybe that's the flip side of it. Do you think that the 7-Eleven clerk should be able to decide whether or not you're allowed to vote? Because that's what you're asking for. And it's not just the 7-Eleven clerk. It's a local Republican official who can put a whole legal apparatus behind their claim that your ID isn't real. And no one is sure what the penalty is for just faking it and saying in bad faith that you don't believe someone's ID. We haven't seemed to work that one out yet. Not really sure why that isn't being discussed. All right. Let's see. A few minutes left here, and I think I made mention of this one at the end of last week. I mentioned All right. Yeah, I think we read a little bit about Liz Dye writing over at Law and Chaos Pod about Pam Bondi's new idea that the federal government ought to be able to take over or see dismissed all bar complaints at the state bar level against DOJ lawyers and employees, an important tactic that's supposed to be able to keep the Department of Justice honest in what it does. That if you are just lying to the court for strategic advantage on behalf of the DOJ or the United States of America, and there's a provable point to make about that by making a complaint to a state bar association to get you disbarred because you did that thing you're not supposed to do, that thing that underlies the presumption of regularity everywhere, that you won't just lie when you're representing the United States or the Justice Department. You might do things that people think are lies, but you need to be able to justify yourself and show that you had a reasonable basis for making these claims. And if there aren't any, you'll be the subject of, whether there are or aren't, you may still be the subject of a bar complaint, but you'll win your bar complaint if there's a reason to believe that you genuinely and in good faith thought this was a real and legitimate argument to make and that the evidence you were offering was real. But if there isn't, you could be disbarred. Therefore, don't do this thing. Pam Bondi says no more of this threatening to disbar people. We're going to federalize all of these cases. And I think Liz Oyer, you may know her from Blue Sky that way, has decided to weigh in on this one. So update by way of TikTok video, I think. That is her preferred format. Call to action today, that would have been last week, Pam Bondi announced a new rule that would stop state bar associations from investigating misconduct by lawyers. We can work to stop this rule by writing comments or stating our objections. She offers a video version of that, plus some links to where you can submit your comments about whether or not you think this is a good model going forward. I wanted to share that with you and let you know. I'll share the video with you in the notes, particularly if you are a lawyer. And I'm not certain whether she's saying that even non-lawyers can weigh in on this thing. But a short TikTok video will explain it all for you in just a few minutes. And let's see, other things that I can squeeze in before we close down for the day. Let's see. Where might we? There are a couple of items that are still pending out there that I had. Oh yeah, right. Well, I don't know if any of these are really going to fit at this point, but scrolling through. Oh yes, let's make mention of this one. This one we won't be able to get through the whole article, I am sure, but this needs to be on your radar. That's what we do here. Exclusive at the time anyway from CNN on March 6th. This too happening after Friday's close of show. GOP lawmakers now pushing for more charges against people they don't like. Who do they want to see criminally charged? Former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson. You remember that she, of course, gave testimony to the January 6th committee that was detrimental to the Republican claim that it was all a day of love and just a bunch of tourism, and that Trump had no ulterior motives in pushing people out the door that day. Republicans on Capitol Hill are asking the Justice Department to consider bringing criminal charges against Cassidy Hutchinson, a former aide in President Donald Trump's first administration, who became a star congressional witness about the January 6th Capitol riot, according to two sources familiar with recent developments. GOP Representative Barry Loudermilk, remember him? He has made a criminal referral of Hutchinson to the Justice Department in recent days. Sources said anyway. He accused Hutchinson of lying to Congress in her summer 2022 testimony when she alleged Trump was aware of the potential for violence on January 6th and forged ahead with his attempts to rile up his supporters anyway. Loudermilk has long attempted to reframe the public perception of the events at the Capitol, including by scrutinizing the House committee that investigated the riot and found that Trump was directly responsible for the riot. His referral was co-signed by House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, who chairs the committee under which Loudermilk is running a probe of January 6th, or rather a probe of the probe, I would say. The Justice Department's press release didn't respond to inquiries about the referral. Both current and former lawyers for Hutchinson didn't respond to multiple inquiries from CNN. They've reached out to Loudermilk for comment. It's not uncommon for Congress to make criminal referrals regarding witnesses that have come before it previously, especially in heavily charged political situations, and referrals don't necessarily lead to charges. A referral at times could add to a criminal investigation or prompt one. They are often treated by the Justice Department as suggestions. But remember who's in charge of this Justice Department, of course. A referral and possible Justice Department action against Hutchinson could refocus attention on a fraught aspect of the work years ago of the House Select Committee and prosecutors. It also comes at a time when the Trump administration has pursued politically charged criminal cases against former government figures whom Trump considers opponents. Hutchinson, now 29, was the top aide to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Remember that guy? Where'd he go to? At the end of the first Trump administration, the Select Committee created by then Speaker Nancy Pelosi considered her a key eyewitness to several episodes leading up to January 6th, in addition to witnessing some of Trump's real-time reactions that day. Her testimony drew significant blowback from Republicans. Justice Department prosecutors under former President Joe Biden's administration interviewed her during their inquiry into Trump and other powerful Republican figures and took some of her accusations seriously. Sources familiar with the probe at the time have told CNN. Hutchinson testified she had heard a secondhand account that Trump was so enraged at his Secret Service detail for blocking him from going to the Capitol on January 6th that he lunged to the front of his presidential limo and tried to turn the wheel. A Secret Service agent and White House deputy whom Hutchinson said were also aware of the story have said they don't remember it. Hutchinson had alleged the lawyer she initially worked with, Stefan Passantino, who was the top ethics attorney for the first Trump administration, had made clear to her that the less she recalled to House investigators, the better. Only she didn't take his advice, fired him, and got herself another attorney, and suddenly had a story to tell.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, we're out of time, but it's time now for Justice Putnam's roundup of everything going on in the world on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Top of the list today, Trump refusing to acknowledge the rising death toll of U.S. troops in his Iran war or the severity he has done to the United States economy, the damage, and to the economies of countries across the world. People might be interested in that. Hang on, we'll be back tomorrow.